Part 76. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Se Nian Bai. Chapter 751. When it was said that all employees would be dismissed, Ho Longtao was only a little surprised, not too surprised. Ho Longtao had seen with his own eyes the working attitude of the cinema employees. Although the move to fire them all seemed drastic, it was unexpected and reasonable after all. It is completely incomprehensible to be an art theater and show all art films. Making technical films is thankless, and showing art films is equally unprofitable. Even Wong Kar-wai's early films won numerous awards in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and they were definitely poison at the box office. After people have money, they often pursue some so-called ideal feelings, even if they pay money. However, Ho Longtao felt that Su Ming didn't have enough money to spend tens of millions for feelings. Moreover, the so-called art film is not just an economic issue. It is difficult to distinguish between art films and commercial films. There are no clear standards for what is an art film and what is a commercial film. It cannot be said that if the picture is more montaged, the dialogue is less, and the character acting is pretentious or more realistic, it must be an art film, and as long as it meets the market requirements, it must be a commercial film. From the perspective of its origin, when the film was first born, it had nothing to do with art. The earliest movie was called Carousel, which was a kind of circus and street performance. It connected many pictures together for the purpose of watching the excitement. Contemporary movies must be related to art. To a certain extent, it is actually a deviation. It captures the essence of the movie, watch the fun and be happy. The threshold for movies is very low. People who read books must be literate after all. An illiterate person who cannot read or write can go to the cinema to watch movies as long as he is not deaf or blind. The audience threshold also determines that movies are unlikely to become a high-end art. Even in Europe and the United States, the most popular and top-grossing movies are commercial films such as Star Wars. The lack of clear divisions is one aspect, but it is not the most important thing. People are not machines. They do not need clear instructions for everything. They can completely rely on their own supervisory thinking to judge whether a movie is a commercial film or an art film. Even if you don't make money and show all art films, you will definitely not be able to support a cinema. The number of art films is too small, and the speed of filming cannot keep up with the speed of screening. It won't be long before the cinema will be faced with the embarrassment of running out of films to show. Situation. This year, there are hundreds of films on the TV market, but the pure art films can be counted on one hand. You misunderstood. Su Ming laughed. What I mean is that not based on commercial standards determines the screening and arrangement of films. It does not mean that only art films and no commercial films will be shown. Ho Longtao thought for a while and asked, how to say it specifically? The so-called business standards nowadays are nothing more than a few. Is there big investment and big scenes, such as Legend of the Gods? Is there a big director, such as those in China who rely on the glory of one or two films and then make them? Is it a bad movie? Does it have a popular star joining it, or has a certain fan base, such as a big movie of a certain show? Investment, director, fans, the three major elements, plus publicity, this is the current business standard. But in fact, these factors do not determine the quality of a movie. Sometimes they can mislead the audience. Producers spend their attention and money on these factors that do not directly determine the movie itself, and often ignore it. Content of the movie. What I mean is, put aside the interference of all external factors, don't even consider economic issues, start directly from the movie itself, and choose movies that truly tell good stories. The key is two words, good looking. As for whether it is a so-called literary film or a commercial film, it is also not within the scope of consideration. As long as it looks good, even commercial films with the most vulgar plots can be shown. If they don't look good, no matter how big name or sentimental, Artistic films are not shown. Before movie theaters purchase film sources for release, the distributor will invite them to internal viewings and let the theaters inspect the movies in advance. What Su Ming wants Ho Long Tao to do is to work in this area. Based on his feelings, choose good-looking movie of. Of course, this is just one of Ho Long Tao's jobs. Ho Long Tao is in charge, and Xi and Linla from the film and television company will probably also be involved. Even. Su Ming paused and said, you can even show some old movies with good reputations. This kind of movies has proven to be accepted by the audience. At the same time, due to time constraints, the copyright is very cheap, and it doesn't cost much to get it bought for screening. This is a good idea. In the past, most of the people who came to watch movies in my private theater would choose to watch classic old movies, a kind of nostalgic feeling. In terms of price, it is more expensive than going to the cinema, but it is not possible in most cinemas. Showing old movies. Ho Long Tao nodded, hesitated for a moment, and said, Old Su, there is something I don't quite understand. Well, you tell me, Su Ming said. Ho Long Tao sorted out his words and said slowly, since you are running a cinema, if I guess correctly, your purpose is to serve economic benefits, right? It's not all about economic benefits, there are some other considerations, but what you said is not wrong. The money in the theater is never wasted. Monkey, I can tell you for sure that I am not spending money to buy feelings. Su Ming smiled. If it's because I like to watch good movies and old movies, I might as well buy the most luxurious home theater equipment and watch it alone at home. Why buy a cinema? Well, if that's the case, why do you have to go in such a big circle and be new and different? Ho Long Tao said, I admit that there are mostly bad movies on the market now, and there are more and more, and they are getting worse. But in recent years, the total domestic box office is rising steadily, which shows that even bad movies are very profitable. As long as they follow the trend and show them, the theaters will be financially secure. Now, is it too risky to think about whether it is good or not? Of course, it's for financial gain. If you don't follow the trend, how can you compete with the big theater chains? Su Ming smiled, Monkey, Changi Cinema has been following the trend of screening, so has it made any money? Has it competed with the big cinema chains? Ho Long Tao was stunned. It was true. The movies shown in Changi Cinema were no different from those of major theaters such as Wanda and Jackie Chan. But the fact was before his eyes that he was in a complete loss. Not to mention competition, even survival is difficult. Does this have something to do with its service? Well, the equipment also has a lot to do with it. Changi's equipment is too outdated and cannot meet the viewing effect of blockbusters, Ho Long Tao said. Su Ming nodded, that's right. We can change the personnel, and we can also change the equipment. But there is a difference between changing and changing. He pondered for a moment, and said, changing people will remove the staleness and bad habits of the theater. For us, it doesn't actually cost a few extra dollars, but it is a small investment that can be done at one time. What about replacing the equipment? Su Ming counted on his fingers, Wanda, Jackie Chan, Polly, China Film, there are 7 or 8 major theater chains in Yangchuan City. Behind each theater chain, there are billions of big funds to support it. Let's go and fight with them, competing with whose equipment is better? Whose venue is more gorgeous? Impossible. Even if I invest the entire Daowin Group's funds in the cinema, I can't compare. At most, I will just follow others. I have invested a lot of money in equipment, but the effect is not as good as other major theater chains. Should I raise the ticket price, or not raise the price? Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 752. The reputation is not as good as others, the venue is not as good as others, the effect is not as good as others, and the content shown is exactly the same. If the ticket price is similar to others, you can tell which theater the audience will choose. If you don't raise the ticket price and play the cheap card, then this is a bottomless pit that will never be filled. Others have made money and constantly updated their equipment and replaced it with better equipment. Changi Cinema has fallen behind step by step. Even with the initial investment from Daewon Group, it will still fall into the same predicament as it is now. So, the key point is the 4 words you said: be different. Su Ming said, compared with money and luxury, we are not their opponents, and our reputation will not be big in a short time. The only change now is to start with the content of the screening. Changi's current equipment is enough to support the effects of most movies, and there is no need for large investments for the time being. And Su Ming has a reason that he didn't say. Ho Long Tao said the reality. Bad movies can make money, and they make a lot of money, but does this mean that good movies can't make money? Could it be because the cinema only provides audiences with one choice, bad movies, so audiences can only pay for bad movies? They can't find a place to watch good movies. And there is another situation. The consumer group in the domestic market is very complex, with a wide range of age levels, appreciation levels, and preferences. Some like to eat sweet food, and some like to drink spicy drinks. The bad movies in Su Ming's eyes have their audience groups. Similarly, those good movies should also have a certain scale of audience. Changi Cinema is not a cinema chain, but just a cinema. It does not need a huge audience of millions or tens of millions. As long as a part, even a small part of the audience is willing to accept it, it is enough for the cinema to turn losses into profits. Shen Yanhe's data statistics team and CAI-Liming's market research team have been working together. According to the intuitive box office data, although the overall trend of domestic box office has been increasing in the past few years, the increase between last year and this year has been significantly reduced, especially this year. During the 3 golden periods of Spring Festival, Summer Vacation, and National Day, the number of so-called commercial films released exceeded 20% of last year, and the total number of screenings was close to 1.3 times that of last year, but the total box office was the same as last year. CAI-Liming's market research gave a conclusion that this is somewhat similar to the golden age of Hong Kong movies in the 1990s, when the movie bubble suddenly burst. Hong Kong movies entered their golden age in the early 1990s. As long as there were famous directors and actors, they could attract big investments and sell at high prices without even reading the script, so that the film industry made a lot of money and bad movies came out one after another. In the mid to late 1990s, the level of Hong Kong movies dropped to the lowest point. The patience and confidence of local audiences were squandered, and coupled with some political factors, the movie bubble burst, the movie market was hit hard, and the cold winter period of local movies has not yet passed. At present, the mainland is also facing a similar situation. Since the first so-called Hollywood-level big production, The Promise, bad movies have repeatedly refreshed the audience's bottom line. In the early stage, there was a fig leaf to cover it up, trying to interpret the content of the movie from different angles. It's not that I'm bad, but that you don't understand it. In the later stage, even the fig leaf is gone, and it is openly, as long as it can make money, it is a good movie. At the same time, a part of the audience group has also grown up from the experience of bad movies. It is no longer the case that 10 years ago, when they heard that there was a big director, hundreds of millions of investments, and 3D special effects, they would spend money to go to the cinema. More and more audiences have begun to watch movies selectively and no longer pay for bad movies that are purely hyped. The high box office of several domestic films, including Zootopia and The Return of the Monkey King, is proof of this. Therefore, CAI-Liming analyzed that the domestic film market may have reached the peak of the bubble, and the next step is likely to be a bubble burst. Su Ming's idea is relatively conservative. The bubble does exist, and it is huge, but precisely because of the large population base of the mainland, there are various groups of moviegoers, And any type of film, even the so-called bad film, has its own market. The so-called bad film is also different from person to person. You may think Kayanyao is bad, but I may think arsenic is bad. Therefore, it is hard to say whether the bubble will burst, but Su Ming believes that good-looking movies will definitely have a place to survive. Maybe the direction of the film market is also changing unconsciously. After leaving Changi Cinema, Su Ming added a fire to Wu Deshan. He released the news of acquiring the cinema with great fanfare, and visited 2 other cinemas in Yangchuan City with relatively poor performance. As expected by Su Ming, Wu Deshan, the owner of Changi Cinema, chose the former without hesitation between his own interests and the face of his former colleagues and superiors. The means of a seasoned capitalist were fully demonstrated at this time. Usually, old Wu, who always smiled at all employees and never said a harsh word, and even seemed a little weak and vulnerable, was soft but strong, using both soft and hard methods, and was flawless. In less than a week, he had signed a contract with Su Ming and completed the delivery of the cinema. Of course, the premise is that all the old employees were dismissed. As for how Wu Deshan dismissed these people, Su Ming didn't know, and there was no need to know. These people had no direct relationship with Daowen Group. Even if there was a dispute, it was between Wu Deshan. In view of Wu Deshan's vigorous and efficient means, Ho Longtao suggested that Su Ming re-employ Wu Deshan to participate in management. After all, he is an old man here and knows everything. Ho Longtao has both strengths and weaknesses. His weakness, to put it bluntly, is that he has seen less of the world and sometimes considers things in a relatively shallow way. Since he decided to make it magnificent even if he has to spend money, Su Ming was determined to train this roommate. He did not mind and analyzed the situation with him. Wu Deshan is capable and has the means, but he uses his abilities and means in the wrong places. Before the acquisition, he was too embarrassed to let those old hands mess around in the cinema, which is called indecisiveness. Once it involves his own interests, he has no mercy at all and fired all these old customers in a very short time, which is called ruthless. For businessmen, ruthlessness is not a bad thing, but it must be used in the right way. If Wu Deshan had made up his mind to rectify the atmosphere of the cinema a few years ago, Changi Cinema might not have become what it is today. Changi Cinema used to be his own industry, and it was still like this, let alone now that it has become an outsider's industry. If such a person is employed, in peacetime, he will probably be a good guy who offends no one and gets by day by day. Once the company encounters a crisis, Wu Deshan becomes ruthless for his own interests, and is likely to be a wolf that cannot be tamed. Moreover, Wu Deshan is the old leader of these employees. He fired those old employees himself and left him in the cinema. The conflict between him and the old employees has become a conflict between the cinema and the old employees. Without Wu Deshan, even if there are dissatisfaction among the old employees, the new Changi Cinema can legitimately ignore them. But if Wu Deshan continues to work, it will be difficult to deal with. People look for Wu Deshan to deal with the previous labor dispute, and Su Ming has no way to deal with it. At that time, those old employees will come to the cinema to make trouble all day long. On the surface, they are targeting Wu Deshan, but what is affected is the normal operation of the cinema, Su Ming said. Oh my God, if you hadn't told me, I really wouldn't have thought of these layers. The water is too deep. Ho Longtao took a breath of cold air. He had good intentions, but after hearing what Su Ming said, he almost made a big mistake. No matter how deep the water is, there is always a bottom. Su Ming laughed and patted Ho Longtao on the shoulder. You don't have to be too nervous. You have never been involved in this kind of affairs before, so it's normal that you can't think of it for the time being. You will get used to it naturally when you encounter more things in the future. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 753. Building roads, at first glance, seems like a very thankless and meaningless task. Massive amounts of money are invested, and a large amount of manpower is used for maintenance and management, providing convenience to others, but one does not know when the money for road construction will be repaid. But with roads, natural chasms become smoother, and the benefits that can be created by the circulation of goods and the flow of people far exceed the toll itself. Channel, from a certain perspective, is the road. The channel itself does not generate value. It requires a lot of investment to establish and maintain the channel. However, once the channel is stable, the role it can play is often beyond the reach of money, or it would cost a huge amount of money to achieve it. Ready-made channels can achieve better results with only a small amount of investment. Su Ming had previously spent a lot of time, energy, and material preparation on various channels for information release and feedback, including various information channels such as Weibo, online platforms, TV stations, and newspapers, and even his real girlfriend Nangang Yan is from a TV station and is now in charge of the news and publicity of the entire Daowin group. When Nangang Yan was asked to manage newsreels, it was not because Su Ming randomly arranged a seemingly easy job for her. In addition to the fact that Nangang Yan was a professional in this field, it was also because news promotion was indeed the top priority. Under Nangang Yan's operation, Daowin Group has established a good cooperative and symbiotic relationship with local television, newspaper, and media. Daowin Yuke's Weibo fans continue to increase and are close to the 8 million mark. This is a huge number for a zoo. Very scary numbers. Several aspects were working at the same time, and soon, the news that Daowin Group had established a new cinema had spread in Yangchuan City. Daowin Cinema? Hey, the address looks familiar. The Changhe Cinema is over there, right? It's the original Changhe Cinema. You don't know yet. Daowin Company acquired Changhe Cinema. I heard that none of the old employees were retained and all were replaced by new ones. So cruel. But yes, I went to Changhe Cinema once, and the waiter had a bad look on his face, as if he owed them money, and I never went there again. I wonder what changes will happen in the new cinema. Can there be any drastic changes in theaters? It's better to just show movies and sell popcorn. Are you asking the cat to sell popcorn again this time? It's fun to do this routine once, but it won't be fun if you keep using it, right? Looking forward to it. Daowin Company often surprises everyone, and I hope this time will be no exception. It's a shame to look forward to it. There are bad movies everywhere now. If a bad movie is shown in another cinema, wouldn't it be a bad movie? It's not all bad movies. Daowin Company also makes movies. Zootopia is pretty good. Brother, do you think it only takes 1.5 hours to watch a movie and 1.5 hours to shoot a movie? Daowin Company does nothing every day and shoots movies 24 hours a day, which is not enough, okay. Baok Group can firmly enter the top 5 among domestic film and television theaters. It started early, has a strong background, and has sufficient funds. Relying on the strong financial support of Baok Group, it is distributed in major cities across the country, even if it is like Yangyang. In a second-tier city like Sichuan, there are also 3 Baok cinemas in the city. The weekly meeting of Yangchuan Baok branch. Okay, that's the routine discussion for today's meeting. Heads of each department, do you have anything else to say? Mr. Qian, the regional general manager, closed his notebook and raised his head to ask the people present in the conference room. The heads of finance, human resources, and other departments were silent, indicating that they had nothing to say. The person in charge of the marketing department coughed and said, Mr. Qian, a new cinema has popped up in the city. The marketing department is a large department that is not only responsible for market development and relationship maintenance, but also pays attention to every move of peers. The shopping mall is like a battlefield. Only by knowing yourself and the enemy can you win every battle. Whether you are an enemy or a friend, you cannot stick to the old ways. How to make decisions depends on the marketing department to collect information accurately and quickly. A new theater, Mr. Qian frowned slightly. The current movie market in Yangchuan City is approaching saturation. If there is one more theater, the box office of other theaters will be divided. Which theater chain is planning to set up in Yangchuan City? Wanda, Bailajin. That's not right. The investment of these theaters in Yangchuan City is already large enough. If we invest more, why not consolidate the current results? The person in charge of the marketing department coughed and said, Mr. Qian, it's not a big theater chain. Daowin Group bought the old Changi Cinema and reopened it. Although the companies in Daowin have not yet been integrated, people in the Yangchuan City business circle know that all those with the title of Daowin are the property of the zoo director Su Ming or the major shareholder, so the circle is also accustomed to the name is Daowin Group. Although this newly emerging group is not yet comparable in size to other giants, its development momentum is so strong that it has become a new and cutting-edge force that cannot be ignored in the business circles of Yangchuan City and even the entire province. It is very attractive. Of course, Mr. Qian knew about Daowin Group, and asked curiously, when did Su Ming start to do theaters again? Wasn't it quite popular filming movies some time ago? Oh, and there is also a protected area. Several older leaders in the conference room shook their heads and smiled when they heard this. Everyone in business knows the most basic rule. No matter how strong the capital is, in the initial stage, you must go all out to do one thing well. It is impossible to cover everything and blossom everywhere. The rise of Daowin Group is indeed astonishing, but in the circle, there is a common belief that Su Ming, the helmsman of Daowin, is still young after all, has a big heart, and wants to have a hand in everything. This led to the rapid development of Daowin Group, but there were huge hidden dangers. First, there were too many businesses, and it was impossible to delve too deeply into each business. Second, there were too many aspects to take care of. It seemed that everything was going smoothly, but once a problem occurred, it would easily lead to a global collapse. The same weight of steel, made into an iron ball, is of course stronger than a piece of iron sheet. In fact, Su Ming himself had considered this issue before. How much investment? Asked Mr. Qian. According to our investigation, it's just a Changi cinema, and it seems that there is no money for decoration, the head of the marketing department said. I said, he has such a big stall, where does he get so much money, and he hasn't listed, the head of the finance department said. However, he seems to have come up with a gimmick, showing what good-looking movies. I have investigated, it should refer to art films and old films, the head of the marketing department added. Oh, I understand, young people are cynical, and this is spending money to satisfy their high-end taste, Mr. Qian laughed. Then should we block it? Asked the head of the marketing department. Theater wars, theaters of the same size fighting each other, large theaters joining forces to suppress small theaters turning over and counter-attacking, these dramas are played out every day in the industry. No need, he is not worth our efforts yet, so as not to cause sensitive backlash from other theaters. Mr. Qian finally set the tone, making movies and running theaters seem to be related, but they are completely different industries in operation. He hasn't even figured out his movies, but he wants to get a share of the theater market. When he opens, send a flower basket to congratulate him, and then wait quietly for him to fail. Well, Daowin's brand is still good. When he fails, we can consider acquiring it and eat a ready-made bite. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 754. After acquiring the Changi cinema, a simple decoration was carried out. Although it did not seek luxury, it did not look like a shabby person. It should at least be clean and tidy. Old equipment such as seats should be replaced and updated. It doesn't cost much to leave it to the construction company. In terms of personnel, Anna Shen's technical department transferred a young man to be responsible for the entire core computer room of the theater. The film and television company transferred 2 employees to be responsible for internal management and external publicity planning. The remaining employees who were specifically responsible for ticket sales and ticket inspection were all openly recruited. It went much smoother than previously imagined. Within a week, the number of people who signed up far exceeded the job requirements. It's really hard to find a job these days. Although the income of a job in a theater is not high, it is good because it is stable and the people are relatively relaxed. It is not exposed to wind or rain, and the technical content is not high. In essence, it is the same as that of a waiter, but it is better than a waiter. Much more respectable and relatively higher income. It was officially opened on Monday morning. Su Ming did not show up. Ho Longtao cut the ribbon as general manager and gave a simple speech to the new and old employees present. Lao Changhe Cinema was officially renamed Daowin Cinema. Several colleagues from Yangchuan City were quite supportive, some sent flower baskets, and some came to express their congratulations. The end of the year is a time when blockbusters gather. However, this end of the year generally refers to the first wave starting from Christmas, the second wave on New Year's Day, and the third wave during Spring Festival. Before that, the period after National Day is a gap period. Blockbusters are all waiting to make money during the holidays. The films released during this gap period are generally mediocre, and more than half of them do not fall into the so-called commercial film category. The box office and response are mediocre, and the film market is calm. Among them, there are 3 movies that are slightly worth mentioning. Master, directed by Su Hafeng and starring Liao Fan, Song Chia, Zhang Wenli, Jin Shijia, etc., uses a realistic approach to describe a martial arts world during the Republic of China. Birds of the Phoenix, directed by Wu Tianming, a leading 4th-generation director in China, and starring Tao Ziru, Zheng Wei, and Li Minqing, tells the story of the decline of the traditional Suana art under the impact of the new era. Maze of the Heart, directed by Xian Yukan, starring Xiao Xianjia, Huo Weiman, etc., the film tells the absurd story of a series of bizarre things caused by an inexplicable appearance of a corpse in a remote village. Compared with other movies released during the gap period, these 3 movies have 2 points of their own. Su Hafeng is a representative figure of martial arts films in the new era. The martial arts films under his hands are not high-end or flashy, but restore the original appearance of martial arts. Every move is precise and orderly. It may even look a bit ugly, but it is indeed the most authentic face of folk martial arts. Martial arts characters are no longer the traditional image of serving the country and the people, but closer to ordinary people with flesh and blood. And among the 3 movies, Kung Fu has the most luxurious lineup. Although the reputation of the 4 leading actors is not as obvious as the current popular ones, they are all actors and actresses with solid skills. The Labyrinth of the Heart adopts a multi-perspective approach, combining several story flashbacks with the main story, which is quite similar to the Western absurd realism style. However, neither the actor nor the director is well known. People outside the industry have never heard of it. In fact, most people in the industry have never heard of it. Birds of a Feather is a sentimental film that promotes traditional cultural etiquette. Since this is the director's posthumous work, the producer knelt down online and hoped that everyone would go to the cinema and buy tickets to support it, which caused a moderate storm. On the contrary, it is currently the most popular among the 3 movies. In addition, there are 8 movies released in the same period, forming a lineup for the gap period. There are a total of 11 movies, none of which are large-scale productions, and the import prices are relatively cheap. Ho Longtao took Xi and Linla to watch them one by one. In the end, the 2 of them agreed that the other 8 movies were all made up, and there were no more than him, and no less than him. Since Su Ming wanted to take the route of a good-looking movie, he should no need to import. Among the three famous movies, unexpectedly, the two of them unanimously chose The Maze of the Heart and The Master, but gave up the most popular one. I haven't watched the movie, but this decision was somewhat unexpected by Su Ming. The three films all have the so-called art film style, but Birds of a Feather is definitely the most standard art film, and it is currently very popular online, so the economic effect will not be too bad. From the perspective of stable income, 100 Birds Facing the Phoenix is indeed the most suitable. If you kneel down to the traditional national culture, the director's legacy, and the producer, the audience will buy a friendly ticket. This was the first time for Ho Longtao to report work seriously to Su Ming. He was a little nervous at first. Su Ming smiled and nodded, indicating for him to continue. Ho Longtao took a sip of water and said, "But you announced before that theaters do not take making money as the first principle, abandon all external influences and choose good-looking movies. So the so-called traditional culture, legacy works, kneeling, this in the final analysis, the 3 points are external things, or a kind of propaganda, and cannot determine whether the movie is good or not." Su Ming heard the meaning behind his words and said unexpectedly, "You mean to say that 100 Birds Facing the Phoenix is not good looking?" Xian Linley was also in the conference room. Ho Longtao looked at her and they nodded at the same time. Ho Longtao continued, "The theme is right, the intention is right, and the starting point is good, but, to be honest, it made me faint. It's a sleepy movie with outdated shooting techniques, old-fashioned storyline, and stereotyped actors and actresses, but it's a politically correct movie. Moreover, I checked and found that this movie is not actually down to earth, and many of the so-called traditions are just random fabrications. The best movie about the transformation of traditional culture that I have ever seen is probably Miss Beauty, but it was a truly pure art film and had no box office." Xian Linla said casually, "No one harms traditional culture, people just want to pursue a better life something. No one is trying to kill a movie that celebrates tradition. They just want to see something better. The Return of the Great Sage is a new interpretation of the tradition. Although it is not perfect, the film still achieved both critical and box office success. It's also a bit confusing between traditional culture and feudal dross, and I'm not optimistic about it anyway. For most directors, once they get promoted, it will be difficult for them to make down-to-earth movies," Ho Longtao also said. Su Ming was stunned when he told them. He had never seen the movie, but it was very popular on the internet. Anyone who jumped out and said these words at this time would definitely be drowned in saliva. It would become a part of national culture. Sinners and traitors. Okay, you are experts in this area. Now that it's up to you, you decide." Su Ming nodded and said half-jokingly, "But where did you say these things? Don't let me talk about it outside and on the internet. To avoid being scolded." "Understood." Ho Longtao smiled. Peers are fighting each other, and those who are most concerned about the release schedule of Daowin Cinema are not the audience, but other theaters. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 755. In just 2 weeks, 2 new movies were purchased. After listening to the report from the head of the marketing department, Mr. Baok Chien frowned slightly and paced back and forth in the office with his hands behind his back. Suddenly he stopped and asked, "What's going on?" The person in charge was stunned and thought, "Boss, you look like you are frowning and thinking, I thought you had figured out the reason, now come and ask me?" "I don't know either. Even though it's a garbage time, I haven't heard of one cinema showing 2 movies. Of course, you definitely can't talk to the leader directly like this." Lao Jin, the head of the marketing department, said, "Under normal circumstances, 2 movies will definitely not be able to support the scene. There are still more than half a month before the prime time. According to the minimum requirements, 8 movies must be released in rotation, otherwise the theater will have no movies to show most of the time, or there will be too many duplicate shows. What's more, the two movies they introduced are not commercial movies. According to normal rules, the total number of movies scheduled every day is 1. 5 games is enough. After talking a lot of nonsense about Tai Chi, Mr. Chien interrupted him a little impatiently. Under normal circumstances. I don't know about normal circumstances. The situation now is not normal. I am ask you, why did they only introduce 2 movies instead of what should be done normally? Actually, Lao Jin said cautiously, Daowin Cinema is just a small cinema. It has introduced a few movies and the attendance rate has little to do with us. Even if the venue is full, it will not threaten our status. Bar. You're a marketer, why do you think so? Mr. Chien frowned slightly. He can't threaten us today, what about tomorrow? We are all peers. Daowin Cinema has made such a strange move, shouldn't we pay attention? Could it be that as long as we are in front of us? It has nothing to do with us, so we just close the door and pretend that nothing happened and live our own lives. Lao Jin, you are also an old employee. You have to keep up with your thinking. You are working behind closed doors and you don't know what the outside world is like. How to cope with market changes. Being able to become the regional general manager of Baok, Mr. Chien is no ordinary person. Compared with Wu Deshan of Changhe Cinema, he is in the sky and on the earth. Lao Jin was more than a round older than Mr. Chien. He was speechless after being scolded and his face turned a little red. Well, Mr. Chien, you are right. But Lao Jin thought hard for a long time and couldn't figure out why. In the end, he could only tentatively say, is it because they don't have money to buy the film source? Lao Jin, what can I say to you? Mr. Chien was speechless and shook the document in his hand. Look, what is the price of the film source in this period? If you can open a store, are you afraid of a big belly? If you don't have this little money, what kind of theater does he open? Mr. Chien, I really can't figure it out. Lao Jin shrugged helplessly. This is not unreasonable, but inexplicable. Well, let's see and then talk about it. Fortunately, what you said is right, and the other party can't threaten us for the time being, Mr. Chien said. Not only Baok, but also several large theater chains in Yangchuan City find it difficult to understand Daowin Cinema's actions. However, as Mr. Chien of Baok said, Daowin does not pose any danger to these giants for the time being. It is just because the peers feel strange. Most theaters have remained silent and wait to see what happens. The answer soon emerged. What, didn't you say there were only 2 movies? Why did it become 12? When Mr. Chien heard the marketing department's report again, he almost wanted to throw the tea in his hand at the other person's face. Although it is still not a big deal, this is too irresponsible. How does the marketing department do its job? It's easy to understand that 2 movies turned into 3 or 4. No matter how careful the investigation is, it can't be 100% accurate. But if it turns into 12 movies at once, it's a qualitative change. What does the marketing department do? Have you ever investigated it? Mr. Chien, we are really not just perfunctory. Just look at these 12 movies shown in Daowin Cinema. Lao Jin from the marketing department handed over a piece of printing paper. 12 films, 1 heart maze, 1 master, no surprises. The remaining 10 movies are actually old movies. Daowin Cinema divided this junk period into 2 units, a martial arts unit and an absurd suspense unit, each led by 2 new films, and the remaining 10 movies were interspersed between the 2 movies to form a 2 small themed film weeks were held. The martial arts films include 5 films, including The Broken Swordsman, The Grand Master, and Reign of Swords. The absurd series includes 5 films, including Crazy Stone, Burning Heart, and 12 Citizens. There are 10 films, all of which are old films, most of which are relatively small films. Popular movies. Like Citizen 12, this movie that imitated 12 Angry Men was released in Baok Cinema after only 2 days, and no one remembered it at all. Strictly speaking, these 10 films cannot be simply distinguished by martial arts, absurdity, or art films. They all have a common feature. They are highly rated among professionals. They all have something to say and can calm down. Come watch a memorable movie. No wonder the marketing department didn't investigate. Who would have thought that a newly opened theater would buy the rights to old movies instead of showing new movies? Mr. Qian, isn't he looking for death? Lao Jin from the marketing department said, the cinema is not a video hall. No matter how good the old movies are, they have been seen. How many people can spend money to watch them? Mr. Qian did not answer Lao Jin immediately this time. He frowned in thought while holding the movie list. This is unusual. As a colleague and a figure in Yangchuan City's business circle, Mr. Qian knew something about Su Ming. It is true that the CEO of Daowin Film and Television is young. Maybe it is not as mysterious as the rumors outside. Maybe he still has the most basic business knowledge and literacy at this point. It is impossible to seek death or be like the rich second generation. Pure money burning. Even if the rich second generation burns money and behaves like a lavish spender in the eyes of outsiders, in fact many of them have commercial purposes. For example, the son of the richest man in the country often spends a lot of money on the live broadcast platform. The real purpose is to hype the popularity of the platform and make the online live broadcast industry popular. Daowin Film and Television must have a purpose for doing this. I don't understand it. Is it caused by inertial thinking? Maybe it's more effective to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Mr. Qian was silent and thought about the problem, while Lao Jin secretly glanced at his immediate boss and thought, "Boss, you wouldn't think about it and ask me, what do you think?" After a long time, Mr. Qian suddenly smiled, as if he had figured out something. "Mr. Qian, what do you mean by them?" Lao Jin asked tentatively. Mr. Qian spread the movie list flat on the table, sorted out his thoughts, and said slowly, "The helmsman of Daowin is young, but he is far smarter than we thought before, and he can follow the trend very well. In this way, in the future there is no need to plan for Daowin cinema. On the contrary, if conditions permit, try to have a good relationship with the other party." Lao Jin frowned in confusion. Shopping malls are like battlefields, so it makes sense not to target Daowin cinema. After all, Daowin cinema is too small to pose a threat, but there is no need to deliberately build a good relationship with the other party, right? Mr. Qian smiled and tapped on the list with his finger. "You are right, the audience for old movies is not large, but does this small theater need a lot of audiences? Daowin's stall is very small, and in Yangchuan City there are only the equipment, personnel, and management expenses of a theater are much lower than that of a large theater chain. Even if 1/10 of the audience of a large theater chain is willing to go, it will be enough to support Daowin cinema with 2 more literary movies. Using movies as a signboard and a series of classic movies can definitely attract a group of nostalgic audiences and a group of audiences with a certain level of appreciation. That's not enough to pose a threat to us," Lao Jin said. This is exactly his brilliance. We underestimated Mr. Su before. Mr. Qian repeated what he just said again, and then said, "We all thought that the entire Daowin group was attacking from all sides and covering all aspects. Now it seems that he definitely has priorities. When it comes to theaters, he should be very clear that it cannot be a big one." The opponents of the theater chain wisely chose another path, playing unpopular movies that the major theater chains disdain to play. In this way, they would not pose any threat to the major theater chains, but would instead form complements. Naturally, the major theater chains would. There is no need to target him. If I guess correctly, the ultimate goal of this Daowin cinema is to build reputation and serve his Daowin pictures in the future. Lao Jin has been immersed in the industry for many years and quickly understood what Mr. Qian meant. "You mean, Daowin cinema only plays high-quality movies? Once it gets a reputation, Daowin cinema will become a real-life Dubon, Does a movie that can be seen in Douyin cinema prove that it is a good movie and lead the way of watching movies? That's about it. Of course, he still has a long way to go to achieve this. Mr. Qian shrugged. He made a very good mismatch. When the big theater chains are all focusing on this new small theater, if he shows the slightest intention to compete, guess what will happen? Being jointly suppressed, Lao Qian blurted out. He had experienced this kind of thing too many times and personally operated it. Under the joint suppression of several large theater chains, it was difficult for small theaters to become successful and could only survive half-deadly. The original predicament of Changi Cinema was largely related to the suppression of large theater chains. Mr. Qian nodded and said, "This is his brilliance. Even I didn't expect this young man to have such a clear view of the overall situation, and he actually resorted to a trick to drain the salary from under the cauldron. Aren't you not going to let me compete? Are you going to suppress me? I simply won't compete with you. You eat what you have, and I play with mine. I don't use my own shortcomings to compete with the strengths of the major theater chains. If we compete for financial resources and equipment, Douyin Group is not good at all, but even though the major theater chains have money, because it is too big, in order to make money, it is impossible to focus on word of mouth. As long as it can make money, it will be in any bad movie. On the contrary, although he does not make much money, he does not rely on theaters to make money. Instead, he can put aside market factors and focus on it. Decide to make a movie. Boss, I rarely hear you praise me so much, Lao Jin said jokingly when he saw that Mr. Qian seemed to be in a good mood. Of course, young people who are rising rapidly usually have strong luck, but they are also very wise. This kind of person is very scary. Fortunately, he is not our enemy. Maybe in the future, major theater chains will go to Douyin. Let's build a good relationship, Mr. Qian said. Lao Jin smiled and didn't answer, but he felt a little disapproving in his heart. Whether it's for word of mouth or to make money, in the end it all depends on whether the audience buys it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 756. Attendance rate is the only criterion for testing the truth. The attendance rate of Douyin Cinema in the first 3 days of its opening made Ho Longtao happy and worried. The good news is that the attendance rate showed a stable growth trend. In 3 days, the year-on-year attendance rate has been increasing. The highest attendance rate on the 3rd day has reached 2.2 times that of the first day, which is more than doubled. I was worried that no one would watch old movies before, but now it seems that this is not the case. Classic movies still have a market. The attendance rate of several classic old movies is not much lower than that of the 2 new movies. In some special sessions, such as early morning and early morning, the attendance rate of old movies is higher than that of new movies. In general, the morning and early morning are garbage times for watching movies. Even large theaters have very low attendance rates during garbage time periods. There are only 1 or 2 people in the huge viewing hall, and the phenomenon of ghost theaters is very common. If we only look at these 2 garbage time periods, sometimes the attendance rate of Douyin Cinema is higher than that of large theaters. The reason is that some people still hope to relive classics quietly and without interference. Of course, most people have to go to work and sleep, and it is impossible for them to go to the movies in the middle of the night or in the morning. There are relatively few such people, and even fewer scattered in various theaters throughout the city. Steady growth, classic films are watched, and the attendance rate of ghost theaters is relatively high. This is the good news. Speaking of worries, it is also very serious and the problem is very big. The total attendance rate is too low. After 3 days, the average total attendance rate is less than 16%, and the highest time period does not exceed 35%. Compared with the big theaters, This data is quite bleak, less than half of others. Among the theaters in the 3 ring roads in the city, it ranks last directly, and there is a clear gap with the previous one. It is even worse than the performance of the original Changi Cinema. The original Changi Cinema's position in the city's theaters was in the last 3, often maintaining the last place and striving for the second to last place. It still has the strength to fight with the other 2 theaters that are also poorly managed. If you are lucky, you may be able to climb to the third to last good ranking. But now it has fallen to the bottom. To put it bluntly, it can't even smell the fart of the second to last place. This is still the stage of new opening. Logically, the opening of new stores is the time when the flow of people is the highest. There are no secrets under the sun, not to mention that all theaters are more or less paying attention to Daewon Cinema. The news of the first battle failure spread quickly. Mr. Chien, it seems that this young bossu is not as amazing as imagined. It is better to meet him than to hear about him. I heard about his deeds before, and they were spread as miraculous. Oh, yes, it seems that there are really a group of savages who worship him as a god. Now it seems that most of them are just a flowery sedan chair carried by everyone. The city has blown it up to establish the image of young entrepreneurs. Hey, I said that young people are not good at talking, and they are not reliable. They blow it up, but they are not good at it. Lao Jin from Bayok's marketing department was a little gloating. When he spoke to Mr. Chien, he was still polite, but there was a hint of ridicule in his words. He and Su Ming had no personal grudge, but because of Daewon, he was scolded more than once by his immediate superior, the regional general manager of Bayok, so he naturally transferred this resentment to Daewon. In terms of qualifications and ability, Lao Jin felt that Chien, a young man who was less than 40 years old, was not as good as himself, but he was able to ride on his head and often scolded him very embarrassingly. He hated the whole house and was dissatisfied with Chien, so he also took Daewon Cinema into account. Mr. Chien, don't you think highly of Daewon? Now Daewon has made a fool of itself, and the words you said 2 days ago are still ringing in my ears. Let's see how you step down. Mr. Chien lowered his head and carefully looked at the data report of Daewon in the past few days. He glanced at Lao Jin with his eyelids, but did not respond to his words, but said calmly, "The marketing department will continue to observe and summarize the data for me once a week this month." Okay, Lao Jin went there happily, thinking that the performance was not good when it was newly opened, so would it be good later? If Mr. Chien's previous words of "don't be enemies with him" were not mentioned by everyone until now, it would be considered to have saved face. Now you have to report the data every week. Mr. Chien is asking for a slap in the face. Very good, anyway, it's not me who is hurt. In addition to the major theaters, there are 2 ordinary people who are not in the business circle who pay attention to Daewon Cinema. Song Lulu and her daughter, especially Song Lulu's mother, have been paying attention to Ho Long Tao since Su Ming and Ho Long Tao used 2 million to stab her in the face that day. This old woman, who has nothing to do, has been asking about things related to Ho Long Tao during this period. Song Lulu was stunned when she heard that Ho Long Tao won more than 2 million right after she broke up with Ho Long Tao and left Hong Kong. The typical characteristic of the petty citizen is that they are short-sighted and can't stand silver. Although her family has several houses, which add up to more than 2 million, Song Lulu still feels entangled and annoyed when she hears that Ho Long Tao has become a millionaire from a down-and-out youth who can't even pay the rent. The main reason is that the houses came too easily, all of which were distributed by demolition. If she really makes 2 million by herself, she may not be able to make it in her lifetime, so in her opinion, 2 million in real money is definitely a huge sum of money. "Mom, it's all your fault," Song Lulu complained, "it's because you always say that he has no future, and you have to force me to break up with him. You see, if you didn't force me at that time, I would have waited a little longer, and he would have made money. If I go to him again now, who knows what he will think? Am I forcing you?" My daughter, you have to speak according to your conscience. Song Lulu's mother gave up and said with a white face, your mouth is on your face and your legs are on your body. You are already in your 20s. If you really like him, can I force you? Anyway, you were the one who instigated it. It's more than 2 million. If we were still in love now, he would definitely buy me a BMW, Song Lulu said. Let me tell you, poor people have a poor life. People like him will be poor for the rest of their lives. Even if 2 million fell from the sky today, he will not be able to catch it. If your mother puts it here, sooner or later he will become a pauper again. Song Lulu's mother said firmly. Mom, have you heard something? Are you so sure? Song Lulu actually showed a happy face. She was in a period of trouble. The reason for the trouble was not the breakup with Ho Long Tao itself, but that after the breakup, Ho Long Tao suddenly became rich. If Ho Long Tao becomes a pauper again, she will have no reason to worry. Let me tell you, I heard that he invested in a movie theater, Song Lulu's mother said mysteriously. Ah, Song Lulu's eyes suddenly widened, it's really a cinema, not a private cinema. Right. Oh, it's all your fault. Song Lulu became even more depressed. Now Ho Long Tao was not only rich, but also became a successful person. When I go out and say that my husband is the boss and owns a movie theater, whichever movie theater belongs to me, these words give me face when I think about it. But now, after enduring for such a long time, I lost at the last moment. I don't know which woman will be better off in the future. What are you in a hurry for? Listen to me, Song Lulu's mother waved her hand and said mysteriously, do you know what kind of cinema he invested in? The old Changi cinema, that shabby place, no one goes to see movies at all. Hum hum. I would say that boy is born poor and cannot make money at all. If you invest the money in Changi cinema, all the money will be wasted. Just wait, it won't take half a year, and maybe you will lose all your money. I owe a lot of debt. In the past few days since the opening of Changi Cinema, Song Lulu's mother actually walked around the theater every night before and after the square dance to check the customer flow. She even pretended to chat a few times and stopped the audience coming out to ask questions. My son-in-law owns a shop. We are the elders. We are afraid that they will be annoyed and can't ask directly, how is the business now? Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 757. The result of Song Lulu's mother's inquiry was not optimistic for Su Ming and Ho Long Tao, but it was a great joy for her. The cinemas spent a lot of money to renovate and hire new employees, but not many people came to see it. The screening room was empty. And old movies. Song Lulu's mother was so happy that she couldn't even afford new movies, so she used old movies to make up the money. Wouldn't this become a video hall? Let me just say, poor people have a low life and cannot bear wealth. Ho Long Tao is doomed to be poor for the rest of his life. Fortunately, he did not marry his daughter. Otherwise, who would he expect for the rest of his life? I have to hurry up and introduce some rich people to my daughter while she is still young. These days, all feelings and love are fake. Can love still be used as food? Nowadays, young people are not sensible. It will be too late to regret when they have no money in the future. It is true to have money to live a good life. When the time comes, my mother-in-law can also take advantage of it. Song Lulu's mother left happily, and the passers-by who had just been chatting with her looked at each other in shock. Is this person sick? She seemed very happy when she heard that her son-in-law's shop had few customers and was not making money. When Ho Long Tao first took over, the theater's performance was not good. In front of employees, he seemed calm and confident as the general manager, but in private, he was under great pressure. Monkey, have you baked it? Su Ming leaned over to look at his shiny black hair. This isn't right. I'm still in my 20s. My hair is dry and split due to my busy schedule. If I don't wash my hair for 3 days, dandruff will fly everywhere like snow. I have to use Nangong's conditioner every night to treat it? No. Why does this kid have black and shiny hair? Isn't this fair? As expected, Ho Long Tao said depressedly, damn, it's only been a few days, and my hair is already turning gray. I didn't dare to let the employees see it, for fear of affecting morale, so I secretly went to get some oil. Hearing what he said, Su Ming breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that it wasn't me who was getting old, but this kid's picture. This is unkind, monkey, you scheming man. Monkey, this is wrong of you. Your hair is dyed so black and shiny. If I go out with you on the street, I look just like your cousin. How can you talk about life and ideals with a little girl? Ah, Ho Long Tao opened his mouth wide. Lao Su, what are you talking about? Aren't we talking about attendance? That's a very real thing. Why are we talking about a illusory scam like a little girl's life ideal? Oh, just a few words to complain about. Su Ming turned and got back to the topic, patted Ho Long Tao on the shoulder, and said, calm down, hold on. Attendance rate is the only criterion, but there are many reasons for it. No rush, we have plenty of time and patience to wait. Wait, Ho Long Tao was stunned, just rely on the word wait, is there no other way? What else can I do? Am I kidnapping the audience into the cinema? Su Ming shrugged, how about adding some special services in the cinema? Give cute girls to watch the movie? Give it to Wu Yu Fan? Let Nangong Huang kneel and lick all the female audience members live? That's not good. Ho Long Tao rolled his eyes, boss, are you really fake? Although you don't make money from it, you can't screw it up, right? Don't worry, it's a big deal. The 2 million you invested is mine. Su Ming patted his chest and took care of everything like a rich man. It's not about money. Ho Long Tao shook his head, money is enough for 3 meals a day and 1 drink for 1 meal. I really hope to do things well in a down-to-earth manner. So I admire you. Su Ming laughed, don't worry, I have experience. Don't be upset. Just do whatever you want. In Ho Long Tao's eyes, Su Ming, a guy in his dormitory, had been in the mall for a year and achieved results that were miraculous in the eyes of all his classmates. He was a great person to have around him. Therefore, Su Ming's words, even if they sometimes seemed like a joke, were nothing less than authoritative words and had a reassuring effect. Sure, I'll listen to you. Ho Long Tao said. This is the effect you want. The result of an event is composed of many large and small factors. Some factors can be determined, some can only be predicted, and some cannot even be guessed and can only rely on luck. That's why there is that sentence, 7 points depend on hard work, 3 points depend on fate. Su Ming is not a god, and he cannot be 100% sure that the theater will be fine. The purpose of saying these words to Ho Long Tao was to strengthen the other party's confidence. Just as Ho Long Tao removed oil and dyed his hair to appear confident in order to prevent lower-level employees from losing their minds, Su Ming, as Ho Long Tao's superior, must also give Ho Long Tao confidence. On the other hand, based on his own experience, Su Ming believes that what theaters lack now is indeed time. As long as you have enough patience, don't get into trouble, and work step by step in the planned direction, the possibility of success will exceed the possibility of failure. There is never a 100% victory in the world. Anyone who tells you that this thing is 100% profitable is either exaggerating to deceive you, or the person who said this has been deceived himself. The internet has greatly shortened the distance between people and shortened the concepts of time and geography. Daowin cinema quickly became a new topic in the Yangchuan City Forum, Daowin Yuquibo, and even discussion groups on Beidu's Hiu and Duban Film Critics Network. Different websites have different styles and different content discussed. Hiu and Duban on the more serious Gundam mainly discuss the Daowin cinema model itself. Many viewers in China have long called for one or two niche cinemas in each city to show art films and replay classic movies. After all, no matter how good the home theater equipment is, there is a difference in the experience of watching movies in the cinema. But niche cinemas are obviously not profitable, or they don't make much money. Capital cannot give up big profits to pursue small profits. The emergence of Douyin cinema just fills this gap. Zhiduban is basically a one-sided trend, supporting Douyin cinema. The movies that Douyin cinema chose to play in the past 2 weeks are not boring, highbrow pure art films. On the contrary, they are all classics. I don't know which article it first appeared in, but the 5 words "good movies" quickly spread and were repeatedly quoted and analyzed in many articles. What is good looking? How to look good? What kind of feeling is good looking? In the past, people always tried to artificially separate different types of films, such as art films, commercial films, sentimental films, and fan films. It seemed that watching different types of movies represented different styles. People who watched art films despised commercial films and sentimental films, and the latter two despised fan films together. People who watched fan films raised their middle fingers and said that you don't understand your world. It was a mess. Now, good-looking movies seem to have become a new standard. No matter what type, no matter whether it is outdated or not, as long as it is good-looking, it is a good movie. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 758. In the past, people often discussed the difference between art films and commercial films online, but there was no standard. The two sides of the discussion turned into a war of words, each of which was to exalt themselves and belittle others. At the beginning, many people thought that the movie was good looking, but it eventually turned into this ending. After all, whether it is good looking or not, everyone has their own taste and appreciation level. What you think is good looking may not be good looking to me. Maybe I not only don't think it is good looking, but also think it is simply garbage. Strangely, the movies broadcasted by Douyin Cinema have never fallen into this vicious circle. Some viewers who have the same taste as Douyin Cinema in selecting films naturally have nothing to say and praise the cinema for its good selection of films. Crazy Stone is a classic among classics, it's so good. It must be, it's a movie that pioneered black humor in China, look at the cast, and later they were all big names. When it was first released, I was too young to understand it, but the older I got, the more interesting it became. Unfortunately, the cinemas don't show it anymore, so I watched pirated copies at home, and I enjoyed it every time. Classic movies are like this, you may not understand it at first, but as you gain experience, you gradually understand it. Laugh with tears. Just like a Chinese Odyssey. It's the first time I know that Zhao Wenzuo has played a movie called The Broken Blade. It turns out that martial arts movies can be shot like this, and the style is so sharp. The Broken Blade is a standard Gulong style. I used to think that Gulong style was only it is suitable for writing novels, but once it is made into a movie, it becomes completely exaggerated and pretentious. I didn't expect that this unknown Broken Blade played so well. Unknown? The person above is talking about Broken Blade? Don't be ridiculous, Broken Blade is such a classic martial arts movie. Zhao Wenzuo is so handsome in it, it turns out that disabled people can be so manly. That's right, it's completely different from those so-called male gods and young fresh meats who are shot at a 45-degree angle, expressionless, and made into PPT slides with lights. This is a pure man's movie. The male hormones are about to burst out of the screen. I like it, this time, even the audience who don't like it, or are not on the same channel, also express their support. Those movies are so weird, I basically don't understand it, but it looks very powerful. Is the fighting in that martial arts movie like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? It feels very elegant. It turns out that there are so many handsome uncles in the film and television industry, hee hee, there will be something to play in the future. I don't know what this person wants to play and how to play. Can you chew on uncles? It's good looking, but I feel tired watching it. After watching a movie, more than half of my brain cells died. I watched 2 movies in a row. Half of the brain cells died in one movie. It seems that this person has become a vegetable. I didn't think it was good, nor did I think it was ugly. I just didn't feel anything. Movies are not RMB. It's impossible for everyone to like them. It's normal to dislike them. But those who don't like them will just say I don't understand it very well or very tired. These are non-aggressive words, and they don't deny the viewing value of these movies played in Darwin cinema. The reason is that classics are classics. There must be a reason for things that can be recognized by the vast majority of people, and there must be excellent content that exceeds the average. As Su Ming had expected before, bad movies can make money, but it doesn't mean that the audience only likes to watch bad movies. Bad movies are easy to watch and have a large audience, while classics are meaningful and have a smaller audience. People are multifaceted. Most audiences don't dislike either of them. They just have their own preferences. It's just that the market used to inject a lot of bad movies, and the audience didn't have the opportunity to choose. With the choice, most viewers are not opposed to watching art films and classic old films. There is another unknown reason for the one-sided comments on the internet. The technical department managed by Shenyang is mainly responsible for information technology. It has always been inevitable to deal with various water armies. Darwin Group is a new force in the industry. Various water armies are very willing to buy it. Shenyang will also use the water army when necessary. Water army is a shady profession, but people who engage in this profession are not all brainless idiots. There are indeed water armies that can be seen as idiots as soon as they speak, but there are also many who are truly talented and hidden. Shenyang has a good cooperative relationship with a truly capable water army, and it is not the first time for the two sides to cooperate. The real purpose of the water army is not to curse openly or to spread rumors and slander. The weakest thing in the world is water, but a steel knife cannot stop its flow. If you cut the water with a knife, it will flow even more. Drops of water gather into rivers. Once a flood breaks out, even mountains and rocks cannot stop it. It rushes in one direction and washes its traces on the boundless land. The code name of this navy is called Muddy Flow. What they are best at is not verbal battles, but unconsciously guiding public opinion. The same thing may be completely different from different angles. The same point of view, if slightly fiddled with a seemingly insignificant but important detail somewhere, may have a completely different direction. Muddy Flow plays such a role on the internet, unconsciously guiding netizens to develop their views in the direction required by employers. Under the premise that the classic movie itself is excellent, the Muddy Flow team secretly operated and guided, and it really lived up to expectations, making the reputation of Darwin cinema on the internet one-sided. Turbid current. This team is interesting. When Su Ming heard about this team for the first time, he still didn't believe that a network team had such power. Guide public opinion? This is so scary to think about. But after seeing the other party's true strength several times, Su Ming believed it. Su Ming asked himself, if he devoted all his attention and time to online public opinion, he might not be able to achieve the effect of turbidity. But it will definitely not leave no trace like Zwaliu. If you lift it lightly, you will definitely be able to catch clues, and it will be obvious that you are a Navy soldier. Although the turbulent flow is a mighty tide of public opinion, it is truly moisturizing and silent. Even experienced netizens, especially rational people, have a hard time finding out from the online messages and comments which ones are intentionally guided. Is a turbid person. After several cooperations, Su Ming thought of using it for his own use. Impossible. This is not a question of money. Anna Shen's answer was simple and straightforward. As far as Shenyang knows, The Turbid Current team is not a corporate studio, but a loose alliance. Most of the members of Turbid Current have their own essential work. Doctors, lawyers, white-collar workers, company bosses, and even civil servants are basically adults with certain literacy and experience. They are connected because of their similar views, form an alliance, and only provide online guidance that they think is right. A typical elite organization. After listening to the introduction, Su Ming made a quick decision and changed his original intention. Except for necessary contacts, do not have any in-depth contacts, let alone join this organization. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 759. While the internet was fermenting, it did not even reach the peak of internet public opinion. Just after one day in the second week, the attendance rate of Daowin Cinema had a qualitative improvement. If the attendance rate of Daowin Cinema was steadily increasing in the first 3 days of the first week, and the data curve was a stable arc, then the following days, the improvement curve was simply a steep slope that could not be climbed at all. The 2 days of the weekend looked like a straight cliff-like increase. The overall attendance rate of the 2-week movie week had been pulled up to an astonishing figure of 52%, and the single-day attendance rate reached 78%. 52% and 78% look very ordinary. If it is a 100-point exam, one is barely good, and the other is not even at the passing line. However, the industry knows what this number means. In 24 hours a day, except for the 7 hours from 2 a.m. to 9 a.m., in the remaining 17 hours, the actual viewing time is no more than 8 hours. Most of the time, it is garbage time such as morning, noon, and early morning. Even for large cinemas, the attendance rate in garbage time is difficult to exceed 20%. Of course, fake box office cannot be counted. The total attendance rate and daily attendance rate of Daowin Cinema include the total and the garbage time periods during the day. And the garbage time period accounts for almost half of the effective statistical time period. It can be pulled to 52%, which means that it is almost full during the golden time period, and there is also a very good attendance rate during the garbage time period. As for the single day 78%, this is even more frightening, which means that most of the sessions can be described as full during this day. Even in the garbage time period, the screening room is never deserted. Changi Cinema, which used to be at the bottom, has been completely transformed into the Daowin Cinema after a facelift. The new decision makers, new executors, and new strategic directions have been a great success and have made a beautiful comeback. Just in terms of attendance, Daowin Cinema has temporarily become the well-deserved number 1 among Yangchuan city cinemas during this period. All major theaters have been paying attention to Daowin Cinema. Even if they didn't pay attention to this small newborn cinema at the beginning, they had to pay more attention to it because of the hot discussions on the internet and rumors from peers. As Baoxian said, it is impossible to just keep your head down and walk without looking at the road, not paying attention to changes in the outside world, the dynamics of competitors or partners, and only focus on closed-door development in the business world. In the end, you will definitely be eliminated. No one expected that just by showing art films, niche films, and even replaying old movies, the attendance rate could be raised to a terrifying level in the country. 78% in a single day? The old man in the industry who has been in the industry for many years suddenly thought of the grand occasion when The Lord of the Rings and Titanic were the hottest. In fact, there are movies that can pass 70% in a single day. On the contrary, there are many. But these movies are basically main theme movies. Employees of schools, hospitals, government agencies, enterprises, and institutions often receive movie tickets during the New Year and other festivals every year. These tickets are half sold and half given by the theater to various units. Strictly speaking, it is a political task. The tickets have been issued, and whether or not people go to watch them, and how many people go to watch them, are all considered seats. There are even movies with a 100% attendance rate in a single day, such as Something Big and Something Big. Of course, there are also some mainstream movies that are really good. But if we just rely on the audience to buy tickets on their own, a single day with more than 70% attendance is definitely a grand occasion. There are many reasons, and it cannot be said that it is 100% the work of the internet trolls. First of all, only a few people knew that Douyin Cinemas showed classic movies some time ago. Through word of mouth, more and more people must have known about it. Furthermore, online publicity is also an important reason. People love to watch the excitement, and they will go wherever there is excitement. The most unfavorable thing is that Douyin Cinema has become a hot topic in the film and television industry, so of course more and more people come to watch the excitement. Anyway, the ticket price of the cinema is not high, the cheapest is 10 yuan, and the most expensive show is only 35 yuan. Old Jin of Bayok handed the statistical data to Mr. Chien with a dark face. I was expecting Mr. Chien to slap himself in the face, but I didn't expect that Douyin Cinema actually achieved amazing results despite all the pessimism. Chien's words of optimism about Douyin Cinema and Suming became a reality in less than 2 weeks. It is said that when the group's board of directors heard it, it had been unanimously praised and recognized by the group's senior management. The board of directors even prepared to hold a special meeting to discuss strengthening ties with Douyin Cinema and Douyin Group, turning it into a routine matter, which would be handled by Chien, who was in Yangchuan City. After all, there were more than just Bayok in Yangchuan City. Although Bayok was huge, it also had competitors. Douyin Group was obviously a powerful ally that would not threaten itself. If Bayok did not win it over, other cinemas would never let it go. Alas, Lao Jin sighed secretly. Maybe he was really old and his ability was not as strong as he imagined. He should just work honestly under Chien in the future. Chien, how about we learn from Douyin, Lao Jin suggested. You can't learn it. Mr. Chien smiled and said, I said last time that our big cinema chain's investment capital and profit-seeking nature do not be able to show at a low price. Even if it is a low price, it can't be lower than Douyin, otherwise it will lose money. For a movie that doesn't rely on special effects to support the scene, do you think the audience will go to Douyin, which has a good reputation and is cheap, or go to the big cinema chain with high prices? And it's not just a matter of investment and profit. Don't look at Douyin's high attendance rate. That's because Douyin has only one theater, and the city's niche audiences with the same tastes are concentrated there. A big theater chain like ours has several theaters in a city. Once the number of people is evenly distributed, the attendance rate will be low. Not only are Bayok, but other theater chains can't compete with Douyin. Why, Lao Jin actually has enough experience. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately reacted. Some people do business that kills their heads, but no one does business that loses money. After all, the cake of niche movies is small, enough to satisfy Douyin alone. It took a lot of effort for the big cinema chains to join. Even if they snatched all the business from Douyin, how much money could they make after sharing? Not only did they not make money, but they also offended people. Isn't this a typical case of hurting others and yourself? It's better to continue to release big movies, even bad ones. Suming's initial positioning of the cinema has now fully revealed its advantages. When it was the weakest, it protected itself. After it grew stronger, it eliminated the danger of the big sharks in the circle coming to grab food. On the contrary, these big sharks still have a certain need to have a good relationship with Douyin, at least there is no reason to make enemies. As for making friends, Mr. Chien smiled, Douyin Group is okay, but Douyin Cinema is still too weak now. We might as well add fuel to the flames and make it stronger. At that time, we can become a truly powerful ally, and Mr. Su will also accept my favor. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 760. For some reason, there is a saying on the internet, every city should have one or two art cinemas, of course not exclusively showing art films, but like Douyin Cinema, arranging a relatively sufficient screening rate for some new films that are deep and good looking but belong to niche films, and providing opportunities to revisit classics. There is no need for too many such cinemas, one or two in a city will do. 100 flowers bloom. Large cinema chains guarantee new films and blockbusters, and art cinemas serve relatively niche and classics, so that audiences who want to watch niche films can also find a quiet place to watch movies. Simply put, establish a national chain of art cinemas. It is a cinema chain, not a single cinema, and it is a chain store in every city across the country. As soon as this statement came out, it immediately received support from many aspects. Needless to say, the civilian audience will definitely support it. The so-called art cinemas are places where you can watch old films and relive classics. Moreover, every time a niche film is released, the screening rate of niche films is frighteningly low due to the interests of many large cinemas. Some viewers who want to watch it often take time out, or learn that their favorite movies have been released, and are ready to buy tickets to watch them, only to find that they have been removed from the screen. The so-called art cinemas do not only show art films, but are called this to separate them from the purely profit-oriented large cinemas. Since the profit requirements are minimized to the greatest extent, there will inevitably be sufficient release time and schedules for niche films. Not all niche films and unpopular films can finally achieve a miracle of turning over like the return of the great sage. Most of them will eventually be silently annihilated due to the small number of screenings and short release time of the cinemas. For example, The Master released this time, 2 Best Actor and 2 Best Actress, has won international awards, but the total national box office is only more than 60 million. In the same period, another youth nostalgia film with a box office of more than 200 million has a score of only 3.4 points, but the box office is 180 million. At first glance, it seems that bad movies have a bigger market than good movies, but a careful analysis of the film schedule and release time will reveal that nationwide, the latter is more than 6 times the former. The total number of releases is 6 times, but the box office is less than 3 times. It is not that niche films must have no market, but that large theaters do not give audiences the opportunity to choose, which compresses the market for niche films. And art theaters are cheap. A random movie in a large theater costs 70 or 80 or even hundreds of yuan, and group purchases cost 30 or 50 yuan, while the most expensive one in Douyin Cinema is only over 30. It is clear at a glance which is better, especially for students who only have a few hundred yuan a month for living expenses. If they can save tens of yuan, 2 people can save nearly 100 yuan, which is by no means a small amount. Saving 100 yuan can allow a student couple to have a good meal. It is not only ordinary audiences who support it, but also the voice of the industry is very high. Part of the industry's support is celebrities and experts in major colleges and the film and television industry, especially the latter. The domestic call for the establishment of art theaters, the screening of niche films, and the revisiting of classics at affordable prices has been going on for a long time. Not everyone is dazzled by the bubble in the domestic film market, and there are many knowledgeable people. However, it is impossible to expect large theaters to burst this bubble. They are the creators and profiteers of the bubble. We can only hope that conscientious merchants or the government will take the lead in setting up a small number of art theaters to ensure that niche films have a place to survive. The sudden appearance of Douyin Cinema in Yangchuan City is just like that. Another part of the appeal is mainly from theaters. At first glance, it is shocking. It is said that peers look down on each other and kill each other. No matter what industry, as long as there is a little achievement, there will definitely be people in the same industry who will jump out and say cold words. Sarcasm is still polite, and there are many who will stab. Peers are the people who know the industry best, and their actions are often the most accurate and hit the key points. But this time, almost all the theaters in the industry have expressed their appreciation for Daewon Cinema's artistic nostalgia route and its affordable ticket prices. At the same time, they said that due to various practical reasons, it is impossible for large theaters to set up similar art theaters for the time being, but the film industry should be 100 flowers blooming. As practitioners, they are willing to support this cause to the greatest extent. In particular, several large theaters with layouts in Yangchuan City shouted particularly fiercely, and even directly pointed out the names of Daewon Cinema and Daewon Group. Among them, Baok Cinema Line is the most popular. General Manager Chian Ziajun, the regional head of Baok, even wrote an article to introduce Daewon Cinema and the entire Daewon Group behind it to the industry. Starting from the various aspects of Daewon Group's deeds, he strongly praised Daewon Group and believed that it would be best for Daewon Group to take the lead in domestic art theaters. It is clear that the carriages and horses are set, and it seems that Daewon Group is going to be promoted. The most surprising thing is that the mouthpiece of the government has also begun to happen. What the people like is to be promoted. It is hoped that all cities and units in the industry can discuss together and build 1 or 2 art theaters in each city. 1 in each city? A nationwide cinema chain. Su Ming smiled and patted Ho Longtao on the shoulder. Monkey, you have to be prepared. Maybe in less than 2 or 3 years, you will become the head of the Daewon Cinema chain in East China. Ho Longtao has not done hair treatments recently. When he is in a good mood, he does not use chemicals. His head is shiny and smooth. His black and shiny black hair looks like an otter fur hat. Su Ming, I am convinced by you. Ho Longtao raised a thumbs up, truly convinced. No wonder you can make money, your vision is so accurate. But there is no rush now. Su Ming smiled and said, first consolidate the base camp in Yangchuan City, and then consider other things. Old Su, I am a little worried. Ho Longtao frowned and said, our business is a chicken rib for the big cinemas. It is tasteless to eat, and it is not a pity to abandon it. The big cinemas will not come to grab it. But now the official media has also spoken. Will the official take the lead and make arrangements? It is entirely possible. Su Ming nodded. Monkey, you really think about the problem more deeply than before. This is a political achievement project, which is beneficial without spending money. There will definitely be many local official departments that will intervene to do it. If the market does not come to grab the business, they will definitely come. What should we do then? Ho Longtao asked. No big deal. Su Ming shrugged. We can't do anything. If they want to do it, let them do it. The market is an invisible hand, and sometimes it may not be controlled by a visible hand. Ho Longtao didn't want to talk about the official affairs, so he changed the subject. Old Su, do you want to contact the people from Baok? Baok is obviously trying to win us over and actively extend an olive branch. Su Ming thought for a while and smiled. Don't worry, don't worry. There are many people trying to win us over at this time, so we are not in a hurry to express our position. Besides, since it is an olive branch, they have to hand it to us personally. Now this olive branch is still far away from us, and we are rushing to reach out to take it, which makes us look like we are rushing to ask for help from others.